Hello, everyone. Welcome to the State of Black Journalism. This is actually ProCon's first virtual event. Historically, we have had all in-person events. So if you attended our last two ProCon events, that is our annual conference, thank you so much for attending. We do have another one happening this year, and also some of our Path to ProCon events where we've been able to engage some of our collegiates. We've been able to engage some other community members. So thank you for all who are returning to this ProCon community. And now thank you to those who are joining us for the first time in this virtual landscape. So we are super excited to be able to kick off this amazing conversation hosted by my girl, Deshonda Brown. If you've been following me for a while, Deshonda and I actually had a conversation maybe 2 years ago about how publicists and media professionals can continue to have ongoing conversations like these. And so I'm excited to bring her back to have an expansive conversation with amazing journalists on how we can navigate through this state of Black journalism. It is Black History Month, so this is an ideal time to have this conversation, but we want to continue to have these conversations throughout the year. And if you have never heard of ProCon before, I actually want to show you a quick video that's going to allow you to get a little acclimated with what our annual conference has to offer. So we will put that on the screen. I am so excited for the second annual ProCon experience. Listen, we are connecting public relations, media, marketing, and communications professionals because we are the engine behind every brand and business.
Go pro in your passion.
When you're a pro, you're not only the expert, but you're also the learner.
To be a pro in my field is to be a leader.
For me, it is freedom, it's flexibility, it's joy, it's doing the things that you love.
Places like ProCon are impactful because people learn through exposure.
It's one space. It's a great networking opportunity. So make sure that you speak to the person next to you. You just never know who's in the room.
It's really just about being able to show up your full self.
I think my biggest takeaway from this event is to never stop promoting yourself. Talk about your wins and your losses.
We did a really great job of just curating a space where people can walk away with actionable items.
I would recommend ProCon to everyone.
Let's go pro.
Let's go pro. Let's go pro.
Let's go pro.
Let's go pro.
All righty, so that is just a quick snippet of what our annual conference is always about. I say that it's value plus vibes. So you saw the vibes in there. We're always going to have the food and the drinks and the networking and the content opportunity, but it's also a bunch of value. We make sure that we jam pack it with panel sessions, workshops where you can actually get tangible with your skills, and just really real value opportunities. That's all I can say. Value plus vibes. You have to be able to attend it to really experience. That's why we call it Experience ProCon. And I hope that all of us do that. So without further ado, because I know I am standing between you and an amazing conversation today, I want to bring on Deshonda Brown, who is our moderator, host, just extraordinaire today, who will be making sure that this conversation is fluent. And I will be behind the scenes watching and learning just like the rest of you. Hi, Deshonda. I'm so excited to have you as a moderator today.
Thank you. You know, I'll do anything for you. Like, seriously, if anybody's on their phone or has access to emojis, please drop some round of applause emojis because Keisha created something that's super important for people like us to connect no matter what field of communications that you're in, whether you're a publicist, whether you're a journalist, marketer, content creator, entrepreneur. So Keisha, you really did something so amazing with the platform that you've created and now making it so accessible virtually where everybody can just log on and be in this conversation and even be part of it by coming in the comments and submitting their questions. So thank you for bringing us all together.
Thank you, Deshonda. I'm emotional, so I could cry. So before I get on here and embarrass myself with the tears, if you attended the first ProCon, you know I am a crier, and I definitely did cry on stage. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and it is really in my heart posture to serve this community in the best way possible. So thank you for being a part of that. Thank you to all of the panelists for being a part of that today. And I'm going to go ahead backstage and prepare my notes and allow you to kind of take over. Thank you, Deshonda.
No problem. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's having a fantastic Tuesday. I hope everybody had a nice, restful, peaceful weekend, and I hope that everybody will have a great week ahead. As Keisha said, my name is Deshonda Brown. I am a journalist, host, commentator, all around dope ass human being. And I am just so honored to be selected by Keisha to moderate this conversation, and to be on a panel with such amazing talent. I can say that everybody that's going to be featured in this conversation, I am a huge fan of, like 1,000%. And I just want to start bringing them in because they're all incredible and I can't even wait for what they have to say. So first things first, I want to introduce Shelby Smith.
Hey, sis.
Hey, if y'all don't know who Shelby is, Shelby's that girl. Okay.
Oh
I'm just saying she is. And then I'm going to bring on Philip Lewis, who I'm sure everybody follows on Twitter. Hi.
I'm muted. Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Hi.
Thanks.
And then we're going to bring in Sydney Michelle, who is one of the sweetest human beings I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Like, she is just such a sweetheart. She's like such a rose in this thorny industry, and I absolutely just love her energy.
Hey, girl. You're the best. Thank you for that intro. Hey, everybody.
And last but not least, I want to bring in Jelisa Raquel. She is, when I say boss babe, she is that. She is just that, nothing less. She is on it. If you need your I's dotted and your T's crossed, she is the woman to do it.
I'm muted. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Lashonda. I love you. You know I'm a big fan.
I'm a fan of all of y'all. Just as I was telling the audience, y'all are all absolutely incredible, to say the least. So I'm going to shut my mouth and I'm going to get the conversation going so that everybody can hear all the amazing gems that y'all finna drop. So the first question I am going to toss to Jelisa. Jelisa, you are award-winning. You are an entrepreneur. You are, first of all, the hair is hairing. You're that girl in communications in the industry. You keep your connections close. And one thing that I've always valued about the stories that you tell and the things that you put together is that you always put people who look like us and people who do the things that we do at the forefront. So I want to kick off the conversation by asking you, what do you believe are some of the most significant challenges that Black journalists are facing today?
Thank you so much for that. That was everything, that introduction. And definitely I am always in support of uplifting other Black journalists, because as a Black journalist, I understand our struggle, that we have to all stick together to overcome most of these things that we're facing in this industry. I would say one of the biggest issues right now that are facing Black journalists is there's so many other cultures and other people that are telling our stories. So if we have so many other people and other cultures that are sharing our stories, where is the space for the actual Black journalists to share our stories, you know? So I think that is a huge problem, because we should be the one that should be sharing our story. There's so many other people in different cultures. I'm not saying that they cannot be immersed in, in what we do, but I think that we should have the pen when it comes to sharing our stories, so we can share it the way that it deserves to be shared. They paint us a certain way when we're not in control of our own narratives. So I would say that is one of the biggest issues. Yeah.
Come on, somebody, starting off strong during our month. Well, every month is our month because, we can't take this off. But started like Obama's Black History Month, Beyonce's Black History Month, MLK's Black History Month. That is a word, because I cannot tell each and every one of you how many times I have worked somewhere and there was somebody who was, melanin deficient, and they were in charge of, the culture section of something, or they were in charge of the urban section, or they were the voice of the BIPOC community. And that's something that we'll go into differently, because trigger word. But y'all know what I mean. It's like, it's very important to have us in the room talking about us and issues that face us specifically, whether it's talking about certain types of cancer, whether it's talking about hair, whether it's talking about style trends, whether it's talking about music. So I definitely agree. And I want to toss the next question to Sydney. Now, you've been doing this for a minute. For anybody who doesn't know Sydney, you've seen her face. I know y'all have seen this beautiful, hardworking face on camera, online. She is amazing. So Sydney, I want to know from you, as somebody who's been doing this, can you share any personal experiences or observations regarding, underpayment, layoffs, or even lack of like proper recognition or acknowledgement within the field of journalism when it comes to your career as a Black journalist?
Absolutely. And thank you, girl. I love you and all the work that you do. Every time we see each other, it's a pleasure. So shout out to you. I got to give you your flowers. But yes, I like to say that I've worked for the top Black media, top white media. So I have a pretty good spectrum on both sides of the fence, but especially in those places that are white owned and white backed media, it's definitely a shame, to be honest. I was working at Forbes in about 2015 or 16, and I was the first Black woman to be on camera for them ever, which is crazy when you think about it, because they have an entertainment beat, they cover music, they cover Black, well, everything's a Black topic. Let's just say it like that. But they cover everything within our culture. So to be in those spaces, and in 2016 for a publication that's been, alive since I think the 70s, it's crazy. It was crazy to me. I was blessed to break that barrier, but it's crazy to me how full-time staff reporter, there were no Black women. There were women of color. I believe there was an Indian woman who was great, but there were no Black women to report on camera for an outlet that covers our music, our movies, our TV, our business. So that to me says it all right there. An outlet that has been a major outlet that's known all over the world, that's been in publication for decades. I was the first one. So you think about things like that, and you think about, it talks about under recognition. I walked in there my second week of the job and someone thought I was the receptionist. It's little racist undertones and things like that we have to deal with in those spaces. So I say this to say it happens on both sides of the fence. Especially recently, we are seeing layoffs within Black owned and led media houses. But to me, I feel as though that's because of the lack of resources, the lack of money, the lack of budgeting. I don't think that it has anything to do with Black talent, because Black talent to me is the best naturally, just by what we go through as a people. We learn the most and we can speak on most things just because of who we are as a people. So those layoffs that go on our side of things, I do believe it's because of lack of funding, lack of budgeting, and things like that are sometimes out of our control. How do we fight that? The verdict is still out. Like you said, Jelisa, supporting other Black journalists. While I was there, I was able to get 2 Black women hired. At the time, myself and another girl who worked in social media were the only Black women while I was there. It's kind of about using the opportunities you have to still propel yourself forward, but also put others on top with you. That's something that, although I broke that barrier at Forbes, I was proud to bring in 2 Black women, both on the editorial side, to continue the work that I was doing in telling our stories. Exactly, Yolanda. That's not why we need to be in the room. So I would say we fight every day, but to start, just to piggyback off of Jelisa, when you're in these spaces, whether it be in a Black owned or white owned media space, try and do everything you can for your fellow Black journalists. There's room for all of us.
I think that was so beautifully said. And just to soundboard off of you two ladies, I think it is so important. And that's why I love events like this, where we could all fellowship together and connect with one another, because it proves that this industry doesn't have to be all crabs in a barrel. There's more than enough for all of us to share. We can create together. We can vibe together. We can cultivate together. We can brainstorm together. And like you said, like Black talent is in abundance. Like everywhere I go, I meet an amazing Black strategist, an amazing Black content creator, an amazing Black social media coordinator, a great Black planner, a great Black administrator. Like there's like someone Black is everywhere for everything we need. So there's no excuse for certain brands to only have a team of people who don't look like us or we're one token person. And I definitely agree that, you know, for anybody who's in this chat, you know, take advantage of the space that you're in. No, we don't see all of your faces, but, you know, don't be afraid to drop your LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to drop your aspirations. Say that you want to do this and you want to do that, and you never know. One of us or somebody else in the chat can very much be like, hey, I'm actually looking for someone who can do that. Let's connect. So it's important to always make sure that you're lifting the next person up, because you never know how that one yes, or that one I'll bring you to the meeting, or that one I'll throw you this opportunity, or that one I'll put you on the conference call can change somebody's life. And I also want to swing it next to Phil Lewis. Everybody knows who you are, sir. Let's start there. You are big famous. Like, I can say every time I see you tweet something, I know it's real. You don't go for the okie doke. It's like once Phil tweets something out, it's like, oh, it's confirmed. It's like you're my number one news source before TMZ or anybody else. Like it's you.
Yeah, Twitter guy. No, look, thanks for having me on here. I really do appreciate it. I really kind of want to talk about something that you were both just speaking about before. And I think, you know, whenever I'm sort of having these conversations about, you know, what should Black journalists be doing, or what should we be thinking about, I really want people to pay attention to these worker-owned outlets. So like Defector, Aftermath, 404 Media. These are newsrooms created by journalists who have been fed up, right? They've been fed up with being laid off, fed up with not getting, you know, the proper salaries that they want, fed up with, you know, newsrooms looking a certain way, fed up with hedge funds taking over newsrooms. These people have come together to create these really sort of awesome newsrooms. They're creating revenue. They're creating their own, you know, their own spaces, right? I think you all should really check out these places. Defector, Aftermath, 404 Media. But one thing about these newsrooms is that, you know, and this is no slight to anybody that works there, they're all still very, very white. So hearing what you all just said about the talent that we have in our, you know, there's so much talent, right? Like we have so many Black journalists that are freelancing right now who are talented, and obviously freelancing it's amazing, right? But it can't, the space can't hold that many, you know, can't hold that many freelancers, as we're all trying to fight for different, you know, for one editor to be like, hey, you know, here's this pitch, and there's 5,000 freelancers trying to get that one pitch, right? So I think if we know that we have the talent, and we know that we, you know, have these amazing journalists, these amazing social media managers, these people, we have all of the tools, right? All the workers to actually come together and create our own collective. It seems like, and I could be wrong, but when I think about worker-owned outlets who have really come together and do these things, I can't think of any Black ones. I could be wrong, because I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. But those are some places that I think, like, we have it in front of us. And I think that this is where the future of journalism is going anyway. You know, as you can see, the fall of traditional media, the collapse of how newsrooms are collapsing amongst themselves. I've survived 5 or 6 layoffs myself, right? So these are just some things we have to be forward thinking as far as, you know, what we want to do, whether that's creating, you know, newsletters, whether that's figuring out what our individual, you know, what are our individual roles? Can we bring them together? Can we collaborate? What does it look like if we decide to, you know, forget the New York Times, forget CNN? What if we created our own platforms? And I know that this is something that people always talk about, like, oh, let's create our own. But I think that right now we're in a space where it really makes the most sense. So that's just, I don't really know what my question was, but this is just what I was thinking about what you all were saying before.
No, definitely. And I want to ask actually you and Shelby this question because you are, you're Phil Lewis. And Shelby is one of the single most talented writers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Like, if she writes something, best believe it is something that is a good read. I have had the pleasure of working with her. She's so humble. She's so dope. When you give her a deadline, it gets done before the deadline, which is it's an editor's dream. So thank you for being so awesome to work with. But I want to ask you, Shelby, and Phil, this question about what Phil had just mentioned about traditional journalism. So when it comes to independent journalism, people who take to the TikTok streets or people who, build their own social platforms, what role do you see independent journalism playing in a world where we see I hate to say it, but like the rapid decline of corporate news and traditional journalism?
Thank you so much, Deshonda, for that introduction. I absolutely adore you, and I'm so grateful to have entered the media landscape through your mentorship. So thank you for that. And piggybacking off of Phil, I definitely think like with independent journalism, we're going to see more. Well, let me piggyback off of what he said originally about outlets posting tweets. I know for a freelance journalist, once an editor posts a tweet, there's like 2,000 journalists that are attacking that editor because they want to be in that space. And obviously, I think one of the issues with Black and brown journalists in our perception is that they don't really see us credible enough to write certain stories or be in certain beats or be in certain lanes. So this work gets, thrown to our other counterparts, which is unfair. So with independent journalism, I think we're going to see a lot more. And I don't want to say I hate to say it, but there's going to be a lot more storytelling through social. People are going to have to become reliant on building their brands because their niche, their brand is kind of what they're going to identify as. And that's what they're going to be called on to talk about, to speak about, to write about. So I think it forces kind of Black and brown journalists to become these content creators, to become these brands themselves, which is difficult if that's not what you signed up to be as a journalist, right? I think we'll also see a lot of kind of like the XO Nicole route and TSR route, like these blogs that have this digital capital. They're going to start having these blogs, and then freelance writers will have to start writing for blogs and not necessarily outlets or these credible publications, which I'm not saying is a terrible thing, but I think it just pivots the direction of our writing, of our storytelling, of our motives, right? So I think journalism is going in that direction as well. I also think there's going to be a lot of, if you're like an investigative journalist, there's going to be a lot on the ground. I was listening to this one podcast about, at its core, journalism is a public service. So how you have grants and the government sponsoring or using tax dollars to pay for media outlets and to have people have their, blogs are running the media, and have people using people's tax dollars will go towards receiving news and information, that being one route. So I feel like there's so many different veins that independent journalists are going to have to take. But those are some of the directions I see it going.
It's so saddening because I can honestly say that there have been so many journalists that I've seen get essentially thrusted into the content creation space. And it's one thing if, that's what you want to do. Like, you want to be a host, you want to be on camera, you want to be on panels. But then there's people who are like very proud introverts who are like, oh, I don't want to have to do this. And I think similar to what you were saying, Shelby, it's one thing to want to do it, but it's another thing when you feel like you're being forced to do it. And then it kind of sucks the passion out of it. And then you're like, oh, something that I was doing for fun is now something that, is essentially going to keep my lights on if I don't do it. Because there are some people who love to be behind the scenes and work behind the scenes and not have to be a professional brand. But I want to throw this next question to all of you, because we're going to talk about something that everybody needs to talk about in the media industry, and that is money. There are everybody in the comments, I can I can't speak for all, but I think I can speak for all when I say that everybody on this panel has experienced, hopefully none, but I think a lot of us have experienced underpayment, because journalism is one of those thankless jobs where it's like you really have to do it because you love it, not because you think that you're going to become Tamron Hall overnight. That's not going to happen. You're not going to be Hara and Jenna overnight. It takes a lot. You're going to get pennies before you even see a nickel. So I want to ask every single one of you, as journalists, how important is it to be real about how much money the industry either has or is being taken away? And have you ever had to create alternative streams of income?
Yeah, I'll just speak as somebody who's I've been at HuffPost for almost 10 years now. And, as millennials, the best way for us to move up, right, is to bounce around. Like if you want to make more money, you have to kind of bounce around. But in journalism, it's kind of hard to do that because the higher you go, there's like a ceiling. There's only so far you can go as a Black person, really. In this, sometimes it feels like that because there's only so many spots, and then you have people that have been in these leadership roles for 30, 40 years, and they're like, look, I'm not leaving unless you kill me or something, So it's been a challenge because you have to fight for literally every raise or every extra bit of funding that you are trying to get. So you do kind of have to find alternative sources of income, right? So whether that's a newsletter or speaking engagements, there's an article in Vox that is titled, I'm paraphrasing, but I think the headline is, no one, everybody has to self-promote now, but nobody wants to, right? And that's what we're just talking about. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, you have to figure out, especially as a Black journalist, you have to figure out, okay, I might enjoy my job. I love what I do at HuffPost, but I realize and I know that I have to be able to expand in other different avenues and do other things, because I can be laid off tomorrow. Usually the Black folks we're the first ones to go, usually out the door. So, and that's what I've seen, through my experience.
Yeah, I'll go after Phil, just speaking from someone who has had experience both as in the freelance world and a typical media job, 9 to 5 or whatever, salary or whatever you want to call it. It gets tricky, right? Because you battle with issues on both sides. With freelance, you have a bit of more flexibility in terms of schedule, in terms of things that you can do and things that you can pick up because you're not on a set schedule. But when you're on a salary position, you come into it, especially working at different type of outlets, like, thankful almost, like, I have a job, it has benefits, I'm making, I have a trusted check every 2 weeks or week and a half. That gives you that security blanket, but it's also like, okay, that also lends to the amount of work that you do. And as you start to do more work, you start to look across the pond, like, okay, at these different type of outlets, these full-time writers, editors, as I am, so on and so forth, are making a little bit more than me. But as a Black journalist, I'm doing more work. So you kind of run into different issues on both sides, unfortunately, especially as Phil said, as Black journalists and Black people in media. It's just a sad occurrence, to be honest. But as Black people, as we always do, we have to keep going and create. What I've tried to do is kind of create a revenue stream with my other passions. So like I do styling, like I really enjoy fashion. So I do styling on the side. I'm not making a bunch of money styling. I'm no Law Roach, but I'm making my little coins, helping my friends, if when they get paid, they give me a certain percentage. Just kind of taking the passions that you have separate from what you do and turning it into some type of revenue so we can continue doing this. As Phil said, I'm an editor at Black Enterprise right now. I'm going on a year and a half, and I love what I do. I love having a team of writers. I love being out of that freelance space. But as I mentioned, you look across the pond at your editors in the same position as me at Elle and at Mary Claire and things like that. And, talk about the salary conversation. I have a friend, Vicky, who I went to Howard with, who popped off that salary conversation. I'm sure many of you saw it. I think that was a couple of years ago at this point, like maybe 2 years ago. And that really opened my eyes to wow, we love telling Black stories. We love working for Black owned, media outlets, but here's what this person is making compared to you. So that also could be a confidence killer kind of, because it's we're doing the same work. In my opinion, especially at Black media outlets, we're doing better work. We're doing the most important work, but why am I not getting paid as much as they are, as much as these white journalists and publications are? So it's really about opening up that conversation. I'm getting ready to do it, on my side, just about, once you've really put in the work, and I don't mean going there after 6 months and ask for a raise, but after you put in your year, you've really shown the company, whether it's white or Black owned, what you have to bring to the table, what you've brought to the table, and what you can bring to the table. Don't be afraid to have that conversation, because they're not going to give it to us. And I feel like the work that we do is important, and we deserve to be paid just as much as our white counterparts for it.
Listen, that is the tweet, okay? I think it's really important for us to have conversations about money. And I didn't realize how taboo, especially in the Black community, it is to talk about money. Because, growing up in a Black household, we can't ask about how much money's coming in. You can't ask somebody how much money they're making. Now I'm just like, girl, I see you freelancing over here. Do they pay well? How long am I going to get my money in net 90 or net 30? Is there a way that I could make this quicker? So having those conversations, even if you see somebody who is just starting freelancing, or they just started working someplace, and you know that place, pays rocks and socks. You can be like, yo, so they only pay $40 an article. I think you should ask for 50, because I know that they probably got it. Or I know these places that are hiring for $4 a word. So if you need that contact. So there's nothing wrong with having those conversations about money, because I can say I was so scared when I first started off in the industry, and I thought that making $50 an article, I was like, what? Hey, I can take my friends out to dinner if I write 10 articles a week. And now I'm just like, oh, that was, and I don't know if I can curse. I was like, oh, that's chicken shit. I can't do nothing with this. I can't keep my lights on. So it's very important, especially to have that conversation, because that shows you that your worth as a writer. That you not only need more than this, but you deserve more, and you've put in the work, so you've earned more. And I want to go off of something that Sydney had just said about pushing forward and prevailing, because as Black folks we always do. But if we're being completely honest, that's so tiring. Pushing through is exhausting. Being on is exhausting. Sometimes just showing up is exhausting, because we know that in order to get 1/10 of what they get, we got to work 100 times harder. So we know that we can't, or we feel as though we can't, show up 100% authentically ourselves. We can't talk the way that we want to talk, or use the vernacular and stuff like that. So I want to ask each of you, how do you keep your mental health in check and make sure that you're checking in with yourself in this industry? And Jelisa, I'll toss it to you first.
Definitely I have to take my breaks. And I take my breaks, and also I remind myself of the things that make me happy outside of work. And I have gotten better with just being intentional with spending time doing those things when I don't have to be in social settings. Or the fact that, being in this field is so fast paced, and a lot of times it's, especially when it's like a award show season, we're traveling a lot and we're doing other things. And on top of that, I work in public relations as well. So it's like, there's really no downtime. when it comes to what I'm doing. So I have to find that time and create it, and then really like be serious about just this week. I'm not leaving out the house. I'm not doing anything. Like I'll go missing for a little bit just so I can detox from having to do so much. Because honestly, a lot of times with my real friends, I feel bad when they want to hang out or they want to do things. I may not want to go if I'm available, because like normally when I'm not working or doing events, I just want to stay in the house. And so I just have to take my breaks. And like you said, this is a fast-paced industry. So if you don't force yourself to take a break, you'll never get one, like for sure. And that's been the biggest thing for me, because I've had times where I felt like, okay, like I'm forcing myself to keep this, because back to back to back. So sometimes you got to say no. It's not worth it. And you have to be intentional about just creating space for your personal life and things that matter to you outside of work.
And Shelby, I want to hear from you as well.
Yeah, along with breaks are super important. Like, especially as a freelancer, you don't get the traditional like corporate holidays, so you have to be intentional about breaking. But I also say support groups. I mean, connecting with other Black women in media who are experiencing the same trials, and then you debrief with them. I mean, it just does something for your spirit. Like, you are encouraged by them. They know what you're going through. So they're able to, if they've gone ahead of you, they're able to direct you. So I think just having a group of women that are also in the same field as you and having scheduled like debriefs with them, because that's what me and my girls do, is super beneficial in just keeping myself intact in this industry along with the breaks.
1,000%. And I see that all of y'all are asking such amazing questions in the comments. Everyone else, like, please feel free to ask questions. Like, this is a conversation. You're chilling with your homies. Like, you can ask whatever you want. And I think that what you said, Shelby, is super important. Like, it's really, I can say that I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have friends and associates in the industry that just get it. Because sometimes, you want your friends who aren't in the industry to get it, but they don't get it. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like the girls who get it. And it's good to have those sounding boards so that you can feel seen and you can feel heard. But it's also important to have friends who aren't in the industry. Like, you have to have that balance, because you can have people that you can vent to and be like, oh my God, this, that, and the third, this person didn't hit the deadline. Oh my God, this is ghetto. But then you have your regular friends who don't see you as the host, who don't see you as the panelist, who don't see you as the journalist. They're just like, girl, that's Sydney. Like, what? Like, that's sis. Like, it's always good to have those friends to keep you grounded, so that you have to be reminded that. And I heard this at one of my old jobs, and one of my best friends, who I think is watching this now, who's also in the industry, said this. We love our jobs and our jobs are important, but at the end of the day, we're not doing brain surgery. Like, we can take a second. Like, it's okay for us to stop. Like, we don't have to go to every event that we're invited to. We may want to, but you can miss out. Listen, I started learning last year that I don't have to go to every event, because they'll just send me the gift bag anyways. I'll stay home. I'll give you my mailing address and we'll solve it like that. It's okay to stay home. It's okay to say no, because when you're selective with your time and you're selective with your energy, that's when you get to know what deserves your energy and what deserves your time. And speaking of time and energy, something that has also been taking our time from us, in a sense, and has been taking less energy from us in a bad way, has been our good friend, artificial intelligence. So, we can't have a journalism conversation in 2024 without talking about our good old friend AI. So, Phil, I want to toss it to you. Do you believe that AI has had a significant impact on journalism? And if so, how do you think that journalists, especially Black journalists, can preserve our voices and jobs in this age of AI?
Yeah, so I've had like a separate, like kind of like another eye on AI. I think we're still in a pretty early, we're still in the early like stages of what it looks like. So it's hard to tell really, because a lot of what AI right now is just plagiarism, right? It copies from other places and pulls it together. I've read several articles that are it's just trash, right? It's not there. It doesn't know enough right now to really write, I think, super effectively. Like I know it's great for building out schedules and other things, but as far as writing, it's not quite there yet from what I've seen. But you do have outlets experimenting with it. They're experimenting with it with SEO, like search engine optimization, with headlines, right, and other sorts of things. But to writing full articles, we're not quite there yet. And then who knows if it'll ever get there, because the stories that Black people find important and the way that we write and the way that we report on things is, I don't know if a machine will be able to quite do that. But technology is just changing every day, so I think it's just important to pay attention to it. Pay attention to like what it is and what's going on. But it's still early. To me, it's still too early to tell. I mean, but there are some great journalists who are covering it. I know there's a journalist at Boardroom, which is Kevin Durant's media outlet, Michelle. She's covering AI, and then there are other newsrooms that are doing it too. So these are some. I would just say pay attention to it and just keep an eye on it.
For sure. And I also want to ask Sydney, when it comes to being part of journalism, I think, we mentioned this earlier, how everybody's being like thrusted into being a personal brand. But also what's happening is that a lot of people who are traditional writers are starting to pivot into being multimedia journalists because they feel like they have to. Like now journalists feel like not only do they have to write and edit, but now they have to learn how to create a video. They have to learn how to, manage a team. They have to learn how to do project management and creative direction. So as a Renaissance woman like yourself who does a lot, what is the pros and cons of training yourself to be a multifaceted person if you just want to stay with one thing?
I think that to be honest, it's something that I had to force myself to do. I'm 32, so I think I'm an older millennial or going towards that age. And it's like, I can't take another social media I barely get TikToks, right? So it's like, as someone who started in print, I started at the Source magazine as an intern writing articles. When I got to Forbes, I was straight print. And then just because my degree is in broadcast journalism, I do like being on camera. I'm all right with the pen. I'm pretty good with the pen, but I enjoy sitting down and speaking with people on camera and capturing their essence and connecting and things like that. That's what I love to do personally. But then once you do that, you have to, I'm thankful I have a video editor now, but starting early on, you have to edit those videos. You have to piece together things. If you mess up on that virtual interview or even, an in-person interview, you have to cut it on a iMovie or whatever the programs are. See, that's how I don't even know what these things are. But, you have to be able to edit it and teach yourself and take that time where you really have to create a really, really good product. And for journalists, our love of perfection is something that needs to be studied, because even when you're a print journalist, that love of perfection and making sure that all your words are spelled correctly, your word count is up there, SEO is great. Everything that you do in print, you kind of want to take it to this new platform, which is creating content and creating videos. So it's like creating content around your work is what I've been able to do that makes it less painful for me, right? So it's like, I hate TikTok, but my publicist that I'm working with now, she's like, okay, girl, you need to, every interview you do, I have a new interview coming out tomorrow with Kelly Rowland, put that on TikTok. I'm like, why? Why do I have to put it on TikTok? She's like, because it's just another platform that your work can be seen. And to me, I'm just like, it's on Black Enterprise. I'll put it on my Instagram. like maybe I'll tweet it out. But like the fact that I now have to go and create a TikTok video, which already takes me like 10 minutes. I might be showing my age now, y'all. So sorry. But it's something that we have to honestly get with it. It's the times. And although if you're a person like me who enjoys social media vaguely, you gotta get with it. I'm literally forcing myself to do it. I feel that in 2024, although we don't like it, it's just something that we have to do. I was blessed to, like I said, be educated in broadcast journalism. You know, when I was getting my degree, we had to log those huge recording cameras down the street to go get, report on the fire that's happening at this house. Like we, especially our generation, we're well equipped. We may not like it, but we're well equipped to do these things. So I'm just thinking it's just more of ourselves, like getting out of our own way sometimes and like, unfortunately, forcing ourselves to do it. But again, it's very much so needed, because then if not, you have the opportunities for these TikTok reporters, as I call them, or these Twitter reporters, or not an educated one like Phil. I'm not talking about Phil. I'm talking about the ones that will just go out and with no verified information and, what they say, put a big caption on it or put a bolded caption on it and now it's news. No. I feel like if we don't take to those social media accounts, it'll only open the door for those who are not trained like us, who don't care about the facts, who are non-biased, as journalists are, to become those journalists. So fortunately, it's just something we got to do. Y'all pray for me.
I love how Sydney just said casually, I'm coming out with an interview tomorrow with Kelly Rowland. Like it's, somebody that you just see on the street.
She was awesome, by the way. And I'm really upset that they're trying to give her this diva narrative. Again, like, I can't wait till my interview comes out just so everyone can see how dope and sweet she was to me. And we were at Netflix's office in a little interview room. It wasn't no diva. It wasn't none of that. So like I said, if we don't put out things to negate the negative narratives about our artists, about our business people, about just our culture in general, people will run with what they are, as you see today.
Just so casually, no matter what I do. Kelly Rowland. Like we love a humble but powerful queen. We love that.
She was so amazing, and I cannot wait, because this narrative they're giving her is complete BS.
I need the link. Like literally as soon as it drops, I need it. And before we toss it over to everybody for questions, I'm going to ask each one of the panelists, starting with Shelby, if you could give one sentence about what you envision for the future of Black journalism, what would it be?
One sentence? That's pretty hard. But my prayer is that we don't have to be in survival mode, that we can actually just be creative and not lead our direction, instead of surviving for pennies to pay bills.
Amen.
Jelisa?
I am actively working to try to help push, us together, and we support each other in any way I can. I wanted to mention this earlier. We've been trying to establish a union because of the fact that there isn't anything like that exists for journalists. Just how these actors and these other writers just went on strike. Like, there should be something that protects us, because it's so much of the entertainment, the news. We control the narratives ultimately. So it's just like, if we don't back each other up and we don't stick together, we are not going to be able to change what we're dealing with right now. And I say starting at the government. Like, we just created the first Black Media and Entertainment Day in Fulton County here in Georgia. So wherever you are, like, we need to talk to our change makers about the things that we need, the things that we deserve, the pay that we deserve. So I'm actively working to push that together. I know this is way more than a sentence, but my only thing I would say is just to literally get active, get busy. The differences and the changes that you want to see in this industry, they're not going to happen by us just talking about it. We got to actually put forth the effort and the energy and find out how we can make a difference overall for everyone.
Interviewing Kelly Rowland, casually making calendar days. I love my colleagues. Like, just Wow. Phil, how about you? What's one sentence that you would give about your hopes for the future of Black journalism?
Just more worker-owned outlets and unionization. That's it.
And Sydney, what about you?
I would say the future of Black. I just hope that we can stop letting fear hold us back from what we need to get done. And there's fear on all sides, fear of rejection, fear of reactions from social media and all that stuff. But I just feel like every other culture just does it. They just do it. They ask for permission later, ask for forgiveness later. They just do it. And I feel like we're just so used to, as Black people, trying to play by the rules. Let's just do it, especially in the media sense. Jelisa, that union, like, let's do it. Let me know anyway. Like, let's just do it and ask for permission and forgiveness later.
Yes. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to the questions. And I know that we're going to be fed the questions from the audience because I see that y'all been chatting in there. Y'all been asking some pretty good questions. So first things first, and this is for the first person who wants to take it. How do you work with those in marketing on a day-to-day basis, or do you?
Well, I work in marketing so as well. So I guess I can comment on this. I would say, I mean, yeah, you need to work with your day-to-day marketers and also your publicists. Being a journalist in the industry, and the best ways by doing that is actually establishing genuine connections with them. Anyone that you want to get to, any celebrity, any story you're trying to get to, there's someone, there's a gatekeeper, there's a publicist or someone that is in position. You find out who those people are and you build genuine connection with them, and you pitch yourself and you pitch your story so that you can know the things that they need for their clients, how it may be best for you to work with them. I also work in music marketing with Def Jam. So it's like a lot of journalists have built a lot of relationships with me so that they're able to get these interviews with these artists when they first come out, because when the label is giving you the opportunity to roll these new artists out, and then they take off 6 months later or 2 years later, like Coco Jones with her Grammy, I can say there's 15 to 20 Black journalists that I gave the opportunity to interview Coco Jones when she only had one song out. So it's just like, and you establish those relationships, you're able to get those stories early on, but also stay consistent in whatever you're trying to do, whether it's music, political, whatever the case it is. There's someone in position that you can connect with and build a relationship with so that you're able to get the stories that you need.
I also want to answer this by saying, don't be afraid to reach out to the freelancers that are not necessarily a brand or a name yet, because there's more flexibility with with what we can write. Like if I'm doing a listicle for Revolt, especially if you have a product, I can list you in that listicle for Revolt, and then you have a feature for a different publication I'm working with. So definitely just don't be so one-track minded when it comes to journalists and who you're pitching, because there's a lot of freelancers that can get you in different outlets instead of just one full-time known journalist that's with one publication.
And I think we might have time for one more question. Yes. Talks with Leash. Hey, Leash. So the question for anybody who wants to take it, what's one tip you would give to new journalists who are starting in the field? Ooh, good question.
I would just say be open to different beats, right? So there are plenty of entertainment journalists. There are plenty of sports journalists, sports writers, and all that. I think there's an opportunity to kind of carve your own path in taking different beats, right? So criminal justice, right, or environmental justice, or there are all sorts of different paths that you can take. And once you really get your foot in the door, then you can you have a bit more of leeway to be able to figure out, okay, well, this is actually what I want to write about. And on top of that, you actually have clips and you have experience now. So don't be so one track minded as to, okay, I will only pursue journalism if I'm covering entertainment, right? Or if I'm covering just one sort of thing. There are all sorts of beats. And then I mean, that's how I got into that's how I got into journalism myself, because I actually first started covering politics, and there's never enough Black men covering politics. So just taking different paths to get to where you want to go.
And that was a great point, Phil. I was just going to say the same thing. When I started out at Forbes, I was just a strictly business writer. They saw, just based off my work and coming into the office every day, probably blasting God knows who, that I had an interest in music and entertainment. And from there, I was able to pivot. So just exactly what Phil is saying. Don't be afraid to get your foot in the door at these companies in any which type of way. I got my girlfriend, she's like my mentee now, and I really, really love her. I got her hired at Forbes as an editorial assistant, which is basically someone who just helps with contracts. They do a little bit of editing. They help, on the back end of things. And then from there, she was able to pivot, and now she writes for entertainment and music also. So don't be afraid to get your foot in the door, whether that's an internship, anything like that. I know we go back to the whole paid, unpaid conversation. I will say I am a partial believer of the unpaid internship. And I only say that because when you take those things, you've really got to make it your own, right? However, don't let nobody not pay you for more than 6 months, for more than no, we're not doing that. However, I will say I started as an unpaid intern at the Source. I just really got in there and got busy. And from there, they gave me the on-camera position 6 months later. I was still unpaid, but that opened the door for me to start being on camera. However, I left there because after 8-9 months, no, we got to live. We need some money. So I say this to say, when you see unpaid work, don't necessarily shy away from it. I know we all have to make money. I know it's really, really tough out here, but a 6-month stunt at somewhere that makes sense for you and that could open other doors is definitely worth it, in my opinion. I know it's a touchy subject, but don't be afraid to shy away from those type of things. And also, like Phil said, getting your foot in the door at these companies any which way you can, and then pivoting to do what you want.
And
yeah, I would definitely agree. Oh, sorry. You want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with what Sydney was saying, far as, don't be afraid of unpaid work. But also, one thing that I've learned is every door that I've walked in for free, I found the money through that door. When you go in these rooms, be intentional. I have a different mindset, because no matter what room I go in, I'm going to eat. I'm always going to eat. You got to go in that room and you got to know who to connect with. You got to be intentional with who you want to meet when you go in these rooms. I'm not going to these rooms to network, just to network and post a cute picture and say I was on the red carpet. No, I'm going in the room. I'm finding the power players. I'm not gonna go through the third party. I'm going right to the party I want to connect with. So I'm always very intentional about these conferences, these events, whatever room. I'm a networking girl, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make sure I know who we need to know. And I learned that from actually doing an internship, because when I started out, I was working for free at Radio 1, and I was doing everything, multiple positions, running the board, cutting breaks, running social media, writing, finding the talent. But when I went in every room with the person that I was interning for at Radio 1, my job was to give her business card out to literally every single person in the room. And this was when people were on social media, but she was old school. She was like, I want you to literally give a card out to every single person in the room. Me being a young, scared intern at the time, I don't even want to go up and talk to people. I'm like, no one knows me. Like, they're going to throw this card back at me. And sometimes people were rude. Like, they didn't know me. But at the end of the day, it taught me, like, that lady touched hands with each and every single person in the room, no matter from the janitor to the person at the top. She touched hands with every person in the room. And I took that away from that internship. And I started doing that. And that's why I increased my network the way it is and why my network is the way it is. So I would definitely say I agree with Phil about being diverse, knowing how to not only be a one-trick pony, but have multiple skills. I've worked with the same publication for quite some time as a freelancer, but also I've gotten money with them as a publicist. I've gotten money with them doing creative direction. Like, if you have different skills, don't be afraid to eat. Like, just get out there. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, like, I always say, you never know what you can be good at until you actually try it. Like, a lot of people are scared to try different things. A lot of people are scared to be diverse. So if you be intentional, you be diverse, and you make sure when you go in the rooms that you're talking to the highest to the lowest person in the room, you're going to be successful. Your network is going to increase, and you're going to be able to have money coming in multiple ways, you know? So as a Black journalist, I do feel like you need to be diverse. And I feel like if you want to continue to work in this field in 2024, you need to have multiple skills.
I agree with what they all said. I also just want to plug platforms that are focused on Gen Zers. The editors at those platforms are used to new journalists or pivoting journalists, so they have more patience to work with you if you're trying to develop your skill set in your writing. So definitely look for publications that are focused on Gen Zers. So SSGU, Wire Media, those are just two that come off the top of my head, but definitely reach out to them.
And speaking of reaching out, I see that all of you guys are in the comments and, you know, connecting with one another. I cannot stress enough, and neither can everybody here stress enough, the importance of connection. Like, whether or not you drop your LinkedIn or you dropped your @ handle for Instagram, TikTok, whatever. If you want to drop your email address, your phone number, that's your business. But whatever it is to allow people to connect with you, absolutely do that. And I want to make sure that each and every single one of our panelists gets a chance to say their handle wherever they want to be reached and the best way to communicate with them. So I'll start with Phil.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on everything. Is just Phil Lewis, like Phil_Lewis or Phil.Lewis. But that's also my email too, Philip.Lewis@HuffPost.com. I don't really do a lot of, I don't really accept pitches. I can get a pitch somewhere, but I don't really, I'm on the other side of the newsroom. So if you definitely want to just talk or anything like that, feel free.
And Sydney?
Hey guys, I do take pitches. It's more so on the entertainment of business, intersection of business and entertainment. But I would love to connect with you guys. My personal email is Sydney, SIDNEEMICH@gmail.com. My work email is a mess, so I'll give you that one. And you guys can reach out also on socials. I'm pretty good at answering. SidMitch, SIDMICH_. And yeah, I do make it a habit to try and get back to everyone. I'm not the best, like I said, time-wise, but I will. If anything, urgent or pressing, you can put that in the subject bar. But yeah, I also am going to be starting a newsletter this April. So if you guys want to reach out just to have your email, for me to have you guys emails, it's going to be, updates of stuff that I have coming on, but also I get a lot of opportunities for events, networking groups. I work with Amazon Studios at Howard for their entertainment program. So a lot of mentorship that I really want to start doing this year. So excited to connect with you guys there.
And Shelby, what about you?
Congrats, Sydney. That's huge. But I'm Shelbs D. Smith on all socials. And my email is hello@shelbydenisesmith.com.
Yes, hello email. I love a good hello email. It just feels so warm. And Jelisa, last but not least, how can everybody get in contact with you?
You guys can reach me at Media Girls Network on Instagram and Facebook. And then my personal Instagram is THA Baddest RHO. Also MediaGirlsOnTour.com. I'll drop all of my links at the bottom. And I want to stop acting like Deshonda. We have a magazine cover that will be released on March the 29th. We're the official cover release party will be on March 29th in Atlanta, but we actually are starting our own magazine, Media Girls Magazine, where we're going to be highlighting other women in the industry and sharing our stories and more information like the things we discussed tonight. Because at the end of the day, like if we don't give each other our flowers, no one's going to celebrate us. We're the ones shaping these stories, making these stories, and making them relevant. And so I'm making the Media Girls the headline. So that'll be dropping March 29th. And Deshonda is actually one of the journalists that is featured on the cover. So I am excited to connect with all of you guys. And I'll drop my links in the chat.
Yes, and make sure that y'all connect with every single one of these incredible journalists. They are some of the best people I've ever had the pleasure of working with, being mentored by, following. Their work is just, it's unmatched. So if you do get a chance to get to know their work, read their work. For me, I took a social media hiatus since last year, so you will not find me on Instagram and you will not find me on Twitter. But you can find me on LinkedIn, and I can always accept the request. My LinkedIn is Deshonda Brown. It's going to be D''SHONDA, Brown like the color of my shirt. And I hope that everybody has an incredible rest of your evening. Thank you so much. Y'all could have been anywhere, and y'all are probably anywhere. But thank you so much for joining us here. Make sure to scan the QR code for ProCon updates, industry job openings, events, and so much more. Thank y'all so much for coming to join us for this conversation about the state of Black journalism. And I hope that y'all all have an incredible night.